Have you ever wondered what hidden mysteries lie within Randalstown Forest? Probably not, but that's what will make this video all the more interesting. Randalstown Forest in County Antrim is a mixed conifer forest spanning roughly 430 acres. It was originally part of the Shane's Castle estate, serving as a deer park, before being taken over by the Forest Service in the 1930s. Deer can still be seen all around the forest thriving today. Part of the forest lies on the shoreline of Loch Ness, the largest freshwater lake in the UK and Ireland, although I wouldn't call it very fresh nowadays. But it's not what can be found beyond the reaches of the forest, it's the history that lies within. I'm sure most of you will know that a large chunk of the HBO series Game of Thrones was filmed in Northern Ireland. In fact, it was practically the show's home base. But did you know that Randalstown Forest is home to some of the most important scenes in the show? I am currently stood in the filming location of one of the most important scenes in all of Game of Thrones. And I know what you're thinking, it's just a load of trees, many of which aren't even standing anymore. But what have I told you? This is the location where the final scene of Game of Thrones was shot. Obvious spoiler warning here, so skip ahead 20 or 30 seconds if you haven't actually seen the show. But yes, this is where Jon Snow goes beyond the wall with the wildlings and leaves his old life behind, concluding what is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. The final 30-second shot we see in the show was taken right here, amongst these trees. It's funny, I actually remember when they were filming this, there was a lot of security around this area. People going for walks with their dogs or whatever were just told to turn right back around. Obviously, because at the time this was probably one of the most highly anticipated endings to a show of all time. So high security was obviously needed to prevent anyone from getting a spoiler. But in the show, it obviously looks quite different. There's more trees, and not to mention they sprayed fake snow everywhere. Unfortunately, you will notice a lot of these trees are no longer standing. That is because a very harsh storm came through here just over a year ago and just completely flattened the place. Mustn't have been a fan of the show. The location of another iconic scene in Game of Thrones can be found in the forest. The famous battle between Brienne and Jaime Lannister took place on this very bridge. Now unfortunately, this part of the forest is technically private property, and I'd rather not record myself trespassing and upload it to YouTube, so this is as close as I could really get. I've learned the hard way in the past that this area is actually pretty thoroughly guarded, so do yourselves a favour and don't try and come down here, because the response time of some of them groundskeepers would put the PSNI to shame. You may be wondering what kind of wildlife adventures are hiding in Randalstown Forest. Birds calling from the treetops and squirrels darting between branches are a common sight, but head closer to the loch and you'll find wetland areas. And when I say wetlands, I mean it. If you're unaware, since the beginning of 2026, the UK hasn't had a single day without rain, so the loch is a bit overflown, to say the least. I stuck on my wellies and tried to trudge through the flood, but it's genuinely waist height in some areas. If you were able to get through, you'd find a nice little bird hut, where you can watch all kinds of species of birds go about their business. I'll drop in a photo of a time when it's a bit more accessible. And you might want to check out the World of Owls, found at the entrance to the forest, the only sanctuary of its kind in Ireland, hosting many different birds of prey and owl species. Another very interesting feature belonging to Randalstown Forest is the underlying military presence that was once dotted all around the area. In several locations around the forest, we can see World War II era pillboxes. You might think this is an odd feature of a rural location with very little strategic importance, but Randalstown actually used to have a strong, expansive railway system, and with its close proximity to the River Main, it was a perfect defence point if the threat of invasion were to arise. So I am stood right in front of one of the World War II era pillboxes that lie around the forest. This one's right in the middle, and I must say, I don't know if this is intentional, probably not, but that's some pretty good camouflage. Three pillboxes can be found in and around the forest. However, it is unclear if there were others previously. Interestingly, each pillbox is placed about 250 yards from the next one, which signifies the careful placement in order to provide mutual fire support for each other. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about the role which Randalstown Forest played in both World Wars, I'd highly recommend you take a look at the Frontline Ulster website, which provided me with a lot of the information in this video. You'd be extremely surprised at some of the operations that went on in Randalstown Forest. If you thought the previous pillbox had good camouflage, have a look at this one. It's so overgrown and covered in foliage that I had a difficult time even finding it. As mentioned previously, a storm did come through here, devastating large sections of the forest. This pillbox is in an area that was almost completely flattened. Thankfully, the structure still remains solid and received little damage by the looks of things. But just to display the sheer magnitude of this storm, here is a satellite image of this very area. It's hard to really see the scale of the destruction on foot, but this image displays the extensive damage done to Randalstown Forest. While nature is wonderful, it has an extreme violent side, enough to scare anyone away. While on the topic of environmental destruction, I want to take this chance to talk about the litter and pollution problem I noticed around the forest. While filming this video, I unfortunately encountered a lot of waste, especially around the loch area. It's frightening to say the least. In an area that wildlife is meant to be thriving and growing, we still always manage to work our way into it and pollute it. I was genuinely walking around questioning how some of this stuff even got here. Like, it must have taken years for stuff to wash up here. And that really just goes to show the extent of this issue, and how much waste is actually floating around in our rivers and lakes. Oils and harmful chemicals are left floating in areas where water birds live and breed. The worst part being, the wildlife doesn't even know this is unnatural. These birds will eat and even live in the waste left behind by us, completely unaware of the negative effects it's having on them. The environment is suffering right under us, and we just glide on by. And look, I'm not going to come in and start preaching about doing better, or all of us have to do our part, because that's not the problem. The problem is ignorance. We're constantly told by the media and large companies to look after the environment and make sure we're doing what we can, all while these large corporations dump unwanted waste into our oceans, rivers and lakes, and we simply turn a blind eye because we use these companies' products every day. We're told to recycle constantly, while these companies practically get free rein on where they dump their waste. This is the exact reason Loch Ness is no longer safe to swim in. Egregious amounts of oils, chemicals and waste have turned it into something you'd see in Fallout, and unfortunately, just putting out your recycle bin every week isn't going to change that. As someone who has worked in an environment that deals with large amounts of waste every day, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that environmental impact is very low on most companies' list of priorities. It's really not hard to see that they will go to great lengths to hide what happens to their waste, and care much more about how they look than what they really are. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect, because we all have our flaws and we all actually do need to do better, but if we want to help our wildlife and environment, we really need to stop thinking and start acting. People need to be held accountable, because the damage being done will soon end up irreversible. On a lighter note to end the video, I'd just like to take a moment to reflect and appreciate the wonderful world we've been given. It may not be perfect, but we try, and that's all we can do. And to anyone who stuck around to the end, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the ride, and if you did, please feel free to leave a like or subscribe, maybe even leave a comment telling me where to go next. There are so many hidden treasures all over the globe waiting to be explored. So to you on the other side of this screen, get out there, adventure, find your passion, just do what you love, because that's all that really matters.